Hi, welcome back. Last time we started up around here, did some of this, spent a lot of money, had a cry, and ended up around here. Progress from here on out is largely dictated by one important factor. I spent all of the budget.
I've got nothing left. I've got nothing left.
With that said, it's important to note that I've made most of the big buys, and luckily before the UK crashed out of the EU trade area, pushing up prices and restricting supply. There are plenty of other things I can be getting on with in the meantime, namely prepping the block ready for painting, building the front end, and restoring the alternator, starter motor, and throttle bodies. There's one more factor in the way, and it's a hurdle I'll bet most of us have faced along the way: project fatigue. The feeling that there's too much to do, too much money and time to expend, and it would be much nicer to sit on the sofa, drinking beer, and watching kung fu movies. I went through it this winter, but I've emerged the other side. So, here's my top 5 tips for getting around project fatigue and diving back into the fight. Number 1. List everything you have to do and print it out so that it's staring you in the face. Number 2. If you've run out of money, work out what can be done for free or very cheaply. Normally, this is cleaning, polishing, and prepping. Number 3. Try and achieve at least something every day or 2 days. Even if it's cleaning or polishing something small, it moves everything forward. Number 4. If you've run out of money, see if you can sell any redundant parts or any other stuff lying around that you've not used for a year or so. It'll free up space and give you the funds to order parts that you need. Number 5. Watch or re-watch some vaguely inspirational build videos and see where you're headed. For me, this is the Illustrators series and also Ben 820 series. Both are very informative, practical, and give you a good direction forward. Back on track, I managed to get the money together for tyres. My wheels were a mix and match, the rear from a K100 and the front from a GSXR 1000. So the hunt was on to find a set of tyres that would cater for both models. The rear tyre especially is important, as the mono swing arm design of the K-bikes means that the clearance restricts how wide and tall you can go. In the end, I found a set of Metzeller's that would work. As much as I like the look of knobbly tyres on a K, they're pretty impractical for something that will be used 100% on the road, so I opted for Z8s. I wanted to avoid having ugly balancing weights on the rims, so on the advice of a friend I ordered some Dynabeats. These are minuscule marbles which are introduced into the tyres at the fitting stage, and as the bike rolls, they gravitate towards the area of the tyre that affects balance, and hopefully correct any inequality. I assume this is achieved by centrifugal force, but as I didn't take physics at GCSE, it could just easily be static or magic. Who knows? The next hurdle was the painting of the lettering. It's not exactly fundamental to the project, but it's something I've always wanted. I practiced on stock tyres that came with the bike and the process seemed fairly easy. But when I came to look at these new tyres, it turned out that the lettering wasn't walled like the other tyres. It was raised. This meant, in painting terms, that there was nothing to keep the paint pen inside the lines. I eventually managed to paint the lettering, but it took a lot longer and mistakes were a lot easier to make. I enlisted the help of somebody with far better eyesight than me, and this sped the process up. Now that I had tyres, I could assemble the front end. I bought new discs for the front wheel and bought some second-hand disc bolts, which I cleaned using an ultrasonic cleaner and polished using Autosol. Just as I was making some progress, disaster. The f***ing discs are the wrong size. How did I do that?
You're a dumbass.
I contacted the vendor who agreed to take them back, but couldn't find me a set to fit this wheel. I could still continue to build the front end and would have to revisit the discs when I found a solution. Initially, I was going to use some Ducati forks, but I found the complications of finding an off-the-shelf triple tree meant that I was being steered towards GSXR or S1000R forks. The power brick makes a great-looking custom triple that plugs and plays directly with a K-neck, and either S1000R forks or with small adapter collars, GSXR forks. I really wanted S1000R forks, but after having a browse I came to the conclusion that the whole front end would become prohibitively expensive. In the end I went for a set of GSXR 1000 K5 K-Tech forks. Because they were second hand, I decided to send them off and have them oiled, serviced and weight rated for a strict K100. They arrived back and I was nearly ready to start building. Handlebars are always a talking point with custom K-bikes. I hate the stock bar position look. I'm sure they're comfortable, but they look ugly and the riding position looks very police bike. I went for clip-ons mounted just below the top yoke. I've got short legs and a long back, which is suited for this riding position. The power brick triple tree also features adjustable steering stopper tabs, which is ideal for maximising the steering range whilst avoiding tank bash. I'm wanting to restore the original control pods for the bars, but use new throttle, clutch and braking apparatus. But more on this in a later episode. Another feature of the triple was a purpose-built aperture for the Motorscope Pro, which I had also ordered. I'd bought a headlamp from a generic Chinese retailer, along with the fittings for less than £15. I love the look of it, so it'll do for now. Maybe with a view to upgrading the quality later if I can find a similar design. I'd managed to source some model and year appropriate brake calipers for a decent price, but cosmetically and functionally they will need restoring. With the front end nearing completion, I needed to turn some attention to the frame. I had yet to modify it to accommodate the Retro Ride seat platform that I'd bought some months previously. Fitting this was to prove a lot more difficult than I would have expected. The first thing to note is that the lines of the platform should match the gas tank. There are only a few measurements available in the paperwork and they didn't appear to be particularly accurate or helpful. The other obstacle is that the fitment points needed to be straight, but had to be welded to a frame that was both curved and angled. We attempted a few tacks, but if the angle was right, the taper wasn't. We came to realise that this was impossible without fitting threaded bar through every fixing point. Eventually, we managed to get something that was straight, correctly tapered and the right height. The positioning on the frame was ugly, but this won't really be apparent with everything in place. On balance, knowing what I know now, I think I would have gone for a custom frame-based build, like this. With that said, I do like the Retro Ride seat platform, and when it's all together, it'll look great. I'm still struggling with the rear fairing. I'd bought an old Suzuki GS rear fairing, and while I liked the shape of it, it was way too big. I tried chopping it down for width, but it was still too chunky. Ongoing, I think I'm going to build the shape using thin ply, and then try and fabricate using a fiberglass kit. Watch this space. There are CAD plans from Retro Rides for a rear fairing pod which can be bought ready fabricated, but it's tiny and doesn't look particularly well finished. We'll revisit this when I have a bit more of a plan. Now the seat platform mounts have been welded, it was time to dismantle everything and pack it off to the powder coaters. Rather than remove the brass bushings, I was advised to get them blanked off instead to avoid any coating getting inside. The VIN plates had already been removed during the suspension platform welding, and all that was left was a few rubber flanges and bushings. I took the slightly controversial decision to leave in the rubber frame bushings and blank them off. I've seen what a huge pain they are to remove and re-site, and as long as they survive the coaters, I can't really see the point in messing with them. I guess we'll find out their fate later. Just a quick flashback to the last episode. Remember, I was confused as to why my angle grinder disc appeared to be running backwards. It turns out this was easily solved by simply turning it upside down. Genius. Onwards. With the frame and other parts at the powder coaters, it was time to turn my attention to the engine block, which was still covered in nearly 30 years worth of grime. Having seen this process carried out on many other people's projects, I came up with a plan to attack the job. 1. Blank the air intakes with the intake boots and rubber flanges. 2. Blank injector ports with rubber bungs. 3. Blank starter motor point with plastic and tyres. Number 4. Blank radiator with a plastic gasket. Blank exhaust ports with money box rubbers. Number 6. Hoover all the loose debris. Number 7. Use a wire brush and drill and carb cleaner. Number 8. Use a nano ceramic sponge and detergent. And number 9. Finish with acetone. I ordered a bunch of wire brushes for the drill, steel wool, hand brushes, carb cleaner and plenty of blue roll. I also rigged my compressor so I could use the air gun to blast out any debris. To blank off the air intakes, I made some rubber gaskets from an old inner tube and used the air intake boots to clamp them. I made the plastic gasket to blank off the water inlet out of an old detergent bottle. Finally, I used tape, plastic and ties to blank off any other inlets. And now I was ready to commence on the 400 hours of cleaning. So, a lot done, but definitely a lot left to do. The sooner I get this block finished, the sooner I can start getting everything back together. Because the weather is pure garbage at the moment, I'm waiting until spring until I start painting anything. So in the meantime, I'll continue with the endless prep. Onwards until dawn. I'll see you next time.